Hey guys, just a little disclaimer at the start. Like the first few minutes, in terms of the first 5, 10 minutes, I put it down to confidence. I wasn't very confident with my new mic and also the settings, which I fiddle around with now, and I'm happy with it. I did try and retake it, and I just couldn't get it to sort of be consistent throughout. So I apologize for that. But I won't be doing these type of videos at the start. Hopefully, moving forward. But again, any feedback would be great, and thank you. So we're just going to spend some time looking at the game development. So the game is a prequel to the 2002 film Star Wars Episode 2, Attack on the Clones, and is a continuation of the comic book series Jengo Fett Open Season by Hayden Blackman. Because of this, the game is set in the Star Wars Legend Expanded universe. The game came about when LucasArts was asked to make an Episode 2 based game which featured our beloved character Jengo Fett. Production kicked off in November of the year 2000, and in March 2001 development began. What I found interesting was the game was built with custom in-house graphic engines for both the GameCube and the PlayStation 2 to take full advantage of the platform's strengths and limitations. Because of this, the graphics were way ahead of their time compared to other counterparts during that era. One of the great things that stood out for me during my time with Bounty Hunter was the level design, and this is all down to Michael Stewart. He came out and shared how every level was originally cut from out in paper, and he would rearrange them in the office before he was happy with them. Jeremy Soule was the composer for Star Wars Bounty Hunter soundtrack, which is absolutely incredible. And if you don't recognise the name, then you will from some of the soundtracks and sort of music that he's helped to produce for other games, such as the original Harry Potter series on like the PlayStation 2, Guild Wars, the massive MMORPG, and also one of the big ones is the Elder Scrolls series. They set out to do two main things when making this game, and one of them was to flesh out the lore and the character which Jango Fett is, and the other one was to stick to the comic books and the movies so it all sort of fitted in. I definitely think they achieved that. I think, if anything, they give you very little information regarding the characters and the sort of creatures and monsters that you see in the game. And a lot of that had to be outsourced in terms of what you'll see, and the sort of names that I'll sort of drop during the video were from fact checking it online rather than the information being provided through the game itself. One of the things I sort of wanted to touch upon as well is the fact that all the actors, in terms of the voice actors used within the game, are the same counterparts that played within the movies. So Jango Fett is done by Tamir Morrison, which I thought was fantastic, and he did an absolutely incredible job within the game. Another thing in terms of the jetpack, when I was researching it, that was only actually going to be used for 1 or 2 missions. And when you think of Star Wars Bounty Hunter now, it's an absolute staple of what the franchise is. The team was constructed of around 50 people at any one given time, which is very impressive for the development of the game from start to finish, but also the end result. The cutscenes were outsourced, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. A lot of the inspiration around Star Wars Bounty Hunter actually came from the comic books, as there wasn't much material to go off during the movies prior to the release of the game. One of the other things they actually got given to bolster their production was they got given the script and the concept art for Star Wars Episode 2 before it was released. In terms of production, in terms of the information out there, it's very, very little. So with that being said, we'll move on to the reviews and then the gameplay. The game was initially released to very mixed reviews. Metacritic gave it a 65 out of 100. GameStop gave it a 5.4 out of 10. I'll be honest, I feel like this is a little bit harsh. A lot of the complaints were around the repetitive narrative. That is something that I do agree with, but again, it's a bounty hunter game, very similar to the Hitman series. To put it in perspective, GameStop also gave Fallout 76 a 5 out of 10, and to sort of put these two games in the same category is just beyond me and a little bit disrespectful in itself. The game is classified as a third-person action-adventure game, which would be a great description if they added platformer in that, but I'll get to that later. You play as Jango Fett, one of my favourites growing up as a child, and we have an absolute massive arsenal of weapons, and we get given more throughout our time playing the game. I will go over the ones you start with and talk through the additions as we get them, but we start off with the classic blaster pistol, the flamethrower, the jetpack, and the mounted missiles. We have a jetpack that uses fuel, which is located on the bottom left-hand side of the screen next to the health. The jetpack refuels while in the air, as long as it's not being used, so you can time it to the point where you can recharge mid-air, which is quite nice. We also have the classic Jengo dart, which is a feature in the film, which is an instant kill but has super slow attack speed. These are poison darts in the movie, but there's no indication that these are any of the same sort of types within the game. That's something that I've already touched upon, but also I want to reiterate, the blasters don't take ammo, but everything else does. The ammo is dropped and found around the level. The same applies to sort of the HP. The HP can be picked up, it's not regenerating. Using the flamethrower uses the same fuel as your jetpack, so as much as you think it is cool, and it is, to fly around using your flamethrower, it's very impractical and the sort of fuel runs out very, very quickly. We also have a scanner ability, which is used to highlight NPCs and enemies with bounties on their head. While highlighting the enemies, it will indicate if they need to be captured or killed, and then that's when the zip cord or whip cord thrower, which is the correct terminology, is used to then capture these bounties. The latter two items I've just mentioned are purely used to collect bounties, and it sounds a lot cooler than it is. They are purely another form of collectible within the game, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but outside of the collectibles, they're pretty useless.
Kill that bounty hunter! I'm going for my ship!
Right, quick look at movement. If you've seen anything prior to the video or what you're watching on screen, movement is key in this game. They've made movement super cool, super fluid, and the animations to go with it are incredible. You can backflip, roll, and jump in 8 directions. In my opinion, the 8 directions are plenty, and it doesn't feel restricted in the slightest. Even though the game forces your hand to move because it's a very fast-paced game, it becomes quite natural because that's something that sort of puts you in the position that you want to be doing anyway. In the early stages, it just feels like Dark Souls PvP. You're just rolling around anywhere. Right, quick look at the options. The option menu is very limited. Unfortunately, there is literally no possibility to toggle it on or off subtitles. There's no options for music in terms of volume control either. Very, very limited. It is sort of common with games around this era to have very limited sort of accessibility options, so it's a great appreciation to see where video games have come now. You look at the latest God of War, absolutely amazing. So it's more, not so much a diss to this game, but more of an appreciation of where games are now. Right, quick look at the lock-on system. It works with the lock-on system. Again, I don't want to keep making Dark Souls references, but it works in terms of what's the closest in the screen. You lock on, you fire. When you use the blasters, they are unlimited ammo. If you hold the square button, which is shoot, it has a steady rate of fire, and then you could rapidly tap it to increase the fire rate. If you want to unlock to another enemy, you have to unlock and then hope that it locks on separately. There's no analog flick or any way that you can sort of switch between the people that you're locking on. What I found interesting is, despite the lock-on system, Jengo Fett has 2 guns, so what will happen will be you will lock onto one enemy, but Jengo will also shoot another one in that vicinity for less damage. We also have these collectibles within the game, which I'll talk about the unlocks later. They look very similar to the checkpoints, but they're orange and glowing. I found a few of them, and they're more hidden in more peculiar places within the map, but there's only 1 per level. The game opens up with the classic Star Wars opening text scene with the scroll in the background with the music. Perfectly sets the scene for a Star Wars game, and the amount of nostalgia that comes with it. I was massively a fan of the Star Wars franchise as a kid, and when the new films slowly came out, I slowly sort of just fell out of love with it. So for me, this was absolutely perfect start. Just want to point out as well, the sound in this game is absolutely phenomenal. The sound of the blasters, the sound of the enemies dying, the sound of the ships, the cutscenes, it's all very much spot on, and definitely appreciating it now that I wouldn't have done when I was younger. You can manually aim, but it's not recommended. Because the game is so fast paced, the manual aim is pretty much obsolete until you get to the later games when you're using it to use your rocket missiles for an enemy in the distance, or it's actually used to shoot explosive barrels to get to certain areas within the second chapter as well. Other than that, the sort of free aim, so to speak, is pretty redundant. We are introduced to the opening cutscene with Dark Trianus, aka Count Dooku, putting a bounty on a current leader of the Bando Gora crime syndicate, Kimura Vosa. Sorry if I slated any of these names. The cutscene ends with us hunting down a gangster called Miko Ginti. This is already happening in the background, so we're not got too much information regarding this current bounty. The cutscene ends sort of with the overarching story of what to expect moving forward. We are put into an arena while Django is stripped of his classic backpack, for now anyway. The beast facing us is our sort of tutorial boss in terms of an introduction to the controls, and I don't hate it because this is the only hand-holding it will do for the rest of the game, so you have to take it as it comes. Once this section is complete, we retrieve our backpack and get stuck into the game. The game feels natural to pick up and feels like a bounty hunter fairly quickly. I was flying around, shooting, rolling, backflipping, what the game intended to do. Another nice little touch that I naturally noticed early on is when you get shot, there's a slight stagger when you get hit. Nothing to the point that it's going to affect your gameplay or you're going to get killed because of that stagger, but I did find it quite interesting and it is a nice little touch. With that being said, Bounty Hunter the game is absolutely full of these nice little touches that I've picked up from my start to the finish, and again I'll be going through each and every one of them. While you're watching the gameplay, if you see Django walk through these blue holograms with knives on them, these are the game's checkpoints. Unfortunately, the game doesn't tell you this or any information regarding what these are. It wasn't till later on in the game when I started dying and I was respawning at these points that it clicked that these were actually checkpoints. I'm all for games being about discovery and self-discovery and learning all these things, but the game does a very, very poor job of introducing new mechanics and then expecting you to sort of understand what they are. I like exploring open world games and then finding new things or putting things together, but when you're collecting items or the game expects you to do certain things without being prompt, that's when I sort of have a slight issue with it. Nothing too serious, it's just me being a little bit nitpicky. But I just did want to point that out. Right, after we shoot some bad guys, make our way through the sort of drug district is what it's sometimes referred to as. On our way to hunt Miko, we tag ourselves a few more bounties. Like I said before, these serve not much of a purpose outside of getting credits, and then credits unlock collectibles. It's a shame really because I feel like they could have really utilised this sort of a little bit more. But yeah, we sort of scan these enemies, we move our way forward. I do want to point out that because of the fast-paced nature of the game, what I found myself doing was not actually finding or hunting down these bounties towards the end of the game because I felt it broke the gameplay up a little bit. Again, that was my opinion. I know some people enjoy sort of trying to find where these guys are, but for me it sort of dried up very, very quickly. This section is first sight at beautiful, but that's exactly what it is. It's at first sight. I left to get some food while I was playing this, and I came back and I got completely lost. And then even at a second glance, it's very, very similar. The skyscrapers look very similar. This isn't really a sort of complaint or concern for the game, but more so the hardware at the time. The PlayStation 2 had a max capacity of 4.7 gig to be precise, which is very, very limiting. And I know when they made the game that they were pushing it to the max, but it is very, very similar. Fortunately, the rest of the game doesn't follow suit, which is nice. So we fight our way through that section and then we get to the boss area. We are greeted with a nice little cutscene, and then we have to fight the boss, which is a fighter ship. Take note of this, it'll be important later. I wasn't thinking too much at the time, but with reflection, you defeat him the exact same way that you would defeat any other enemy in the game. You just lock on, roll and jump, and then repeat. Because of this, it does get quite stale as you move through the game, as the auto lock-on system switches between weak points within the ship, so there's not much more to it, unfortunately. The first time great, but when it's reused 2, 3 or even 4 times, again it starts to get a little bit boring. At this point in time though, thoroughly enjoying it to this point. So once we've defeated the bounty, what we have is an absolute beautiful cutscene. We're rewarded these after every sort of chapter and the beginning of every chapter as well. We meet with our old friend Rosetta, who is the same species as Watto in the movies, if you know what I'm talking about. Or it's usually Roz for short, so I'll be referring it to as Roz, and also Django refers to her as Roz moving forward. She's in your ear from start to finish during the game, updating you on mission objectives, and just chiming in when she feels fit. Once we capture our target, We then are taken back into the ship and we have a conversation with Roz. We discuss the 5 million credit bounty that Count Dooku has put on Vosa, and we talk about where we're going to get that information from, and then that concludes chapter 1. At the moment, I'm absolutely loving it. I know that it was an introduction chapter, but it's already getting you excited for what's to come.
Scum. But Miko wasn't the only reason I asked you to come back. A transmission came for you. It's personal.
We then proceed to hunt down a target which we believe that's going to aid us in finding Vosa. This person is called Jarvis Gloom and is located on the planet Coruscant. We go and then capture Jarvis, who then tells us that he works for an individual called Jovis Hung. You can already see the repeated story here, and like I said before, I don't really have an issue with it, but you can sort of see it very, very early on, and it does happen numerous of times. And you can complete the game in around about 6 hours. During our quest to go find Hung, we bump into our old friend Montross. He's the bold gentleman that you can see on the screen, who is also a bounty hunter and ex-Mandalorian. For people that don't know, the Mandalorian is a nomadic group of clan-based individuals consisting of members from completely different species, completely different universes and planets that come together under the form of value and honour within war. That's what it was originally. It's changed a little bit then and now, but if you want any more information, I highly recommend having a look on YouTube or watching The Mandalorian just to give you a bit more insight into what they are. But Montrose is an ex-Mandalorian because he went against what the Mandalorians stand for in one way or another. This isn't really explored much in the actual game, rather than fact-checking it elsewhere, but it does give you a little bit of an insight either way. Interesting fact, the logo or the emblem that you see on Jengo Fett and also in the opening credits and the loading screen, that is his logo, so it's not actually the Mandalorian's logo. Each Mandalorian has a symbol or an emblem who represents usually a beast that they've slain, and then they get awarded that as their sort of emblem so you can recognise who that is from. We go to find Hung, but he's already killed by Montross. So what we do is have a cool fight with Montross. Again, same fight as any other enemy, flying around, shooting. He gets away. Unfortunately, we don't actually kill him, and we find out that he's also killed our lead. We continue through the death stick trafficking ring, is what the sort of the Bando Gora are sort of running. And then we find ourselves in this sort of penthouse mansion type of area, and we sort of make our way through there. As we make our way there, we manage to stumble upon the drug trafficking scandal leader, Twiclick Centre Canus Trell. It just so happens that he was located on the top of this building, and we went there. No other explanation was given, unfortunately. We interrogate him in this cool cutscene, and then we were told to drop him by the guards, and then we drop him to his death. After we drop him to his death, we are delighted with another gunship fight. Unfortunately, again, we fight this the exact same way as the first one. It is a slight different design, but the fundamentals stay the same. It is cool, it's outside, you're on a penthouse. The difficulty changes slightly when there's more enemies spawning, and the enemies do respawn. I noticed that the enemies only respawn during boss fights, and I think that serves as a purpose for when they drop ammo and they drop health. Outside the boss arena, enemies do not respawn. Once we finish this, we are treated to an absolute beautiful cutscene once again. Fun fact, actually, the cutscenes were created outside of the development company by an animation studio called Industrial Light and Magic. This was mainly a movie studio that created animations, but it was also founded by George Lucas. In the short clips, we are told that our friend Voz, that Sabolta, the individual that we were looking for, has put a £50,000 chip bounty on the man named Bendix Fust. We decided, rather than go interrogate Solbet or Soberto, that we would achieve this bounty for him in hopes that we can exchange it for information of Vosa's whereabouts. The bounty is located on an astral planet called Avova 5. So next stop, Planet Prison. I found it funny though that we went to go get a bounty in exchange for information rather than just interrogate this individual like we have done with all of them up to this point, but I'd say less. Just wanted to point out the banter between Roz and Jango throughout these cutscenes is absolutely adorable. The back and forth and the exchanges they have is a really nice touch.
I hope you're not planning on using your jetpack inside the prison.
I'll be careful.
Chapter 3, the mission starts strong with us landing on a desolate planet and breaking into a castle-like structure, which is of course is the prison. It also introduces turrets that are handled by other enemy units. The issue with them is that they pump out a lot of damage and the fire rate is very high, but once you come around them or you get behind them somehow, they're pretty static and they're dead before they can even dismount the turret. To add to the new enemy types that are introduced with each mission or each chapter, each enemy is reskinned to match the setting or the environment that you're in. So when you go to the jungle area, sorry spoilers, then they're jungle type creatures. Some of them behave differently, some of them don't, but again they're not just reusing the sort of same skins. This chapter also introduces the rocket launcher on your back. It's very OP, it has massive AoE and I absolutely love it. The downside is that there's not a lot of ammo, but that's to be expected. Cool little addition as well is when you are out of rockets, you actually no longer see the rocket located in your backpack. It won't be there. Once you have ammo, then it appears. Again, just a nice little touch. Another enemy that is introduced to the prison sort of area is the security prison robots, a pretty cool addition. But again, very similar to the enemies, same way to dispatch them. Shoot, jump, roll, repeat. Despite having massive and arsenal weapons, I find myself actually only using the default blaster pistols and not changing around enemy types. This is changed later on, but at this point, halfway nearly to the end of chapter 3, I just kept on using the pistols just because I believed that they were most efficient. During the final stages of this chapter, they're introduced yet another enemy type, which is the automatic turret, which are usually located on walls or ceilings within or around the prison. These are also used in further missions as well, but that's to be expected. Due to the majority of my deaths as well being around the platforming sections, unfortunately, there is a few platforming sections throughout the game, and unfortunately the platforming sections, if you fail them, you die. And that becomes an issue purely because you only have 6 lives. Once those 6 lives are gone, then you die and you have to restart the entire mission again. I very rarely died through bullets or grenades or rockets. The majority of my deaths, I would actually put 90% of my deaths were through these platforming sections, and which I failed to mention at the end of chapter 2 is the mission where we kill the Senate is through a platforming section which I died on numerous of times, lost my 6 deaths, which meant I had to start the entire mission again. Would like to point that out. It might just be me being really bad at platforming sections, but just wanted that to be highlighted. Another thing while we're talking about deaths is the blue sort of markers that you see with the dagger through them. Again, just to reiterate, they are checkpoints. There is no indication throughout the entire game to say that these are checkpoints. It's only when I started dying frequently towards the end where I was respawning at these checkpoints and I was like, okay, this is what these are. Even with the platforming sections, I didn't click that these were checkpoints. So one of my only really complaints, and it's not more of a complaint but more of an annoyance actually, is every single music that I've already mentioned before. The music is absolutely spot on, the sound is spot on, everything's incredible. When you come to this prison area, they have prison chanting, which is absolutely great, but the prison chanting is the only thing that is being played, and it is being played on repeat for the entire mission, and it's just this constant chanting. And yes, it works well in short successions, but overall it was just getting quite frustrating. Just thought I'd point out, you can see here that on the top right hand I have what looks like a jetpack icon, and that means we have unlimited jetpack for a certain period of time. Once that's finished, we can then not use the jetpack until it recharges again. We fight our way through the prison to get to our bounty or our target. We have a plasma cutter which Django uses to go through metal grates. These grates are spotted around the map just to divide the mission up a little bit, and I think they work as loading screens as well. Other than that, the plasma cutter cannot be used outside of these set pieces. But when we reach Bandix first, he is already being captured by another bounty caller called Zam Wessel. We'll be referring to her as Zam moving forward. She actually plays a massive part in Jengo Fett's storyline outside of the game, and this is a sort of prequel to her sort of story arc. Through the intercom at this point, we are ridiculed by Roz, the fact that we got beaten by a woman. So that's early 2000s sexism for you. And as we confront Zam, she sets off the riots to distract us, or distract the enemy, so to speak. So during the riots, we sort of have to break our way out of the prison. I never found much use for the flamethrower up to this point, just because it was very static and you had to stand still. But the flamethrower comes massively handy in this part, just purely because most of the enemies in the prison are melee based, so they don't really pose much of a threat. When we sort of break out the prison at this point, we hunt down Zam and the bounty and we see them go outside. When we get outside, we see our ship blow up in this absolute fashion of Star Wars, and it gets destroyed by the Slav 1 fighter ship. So that's the classic Django ship that you sort of see throughout the movies, the films, and also sort of the Legos as well. We'll get onto that in a little bit after. Once we sort of fight our way to the ship, we speak to Zam, who says that she needs to get off the planet, so do we, and we are offered to sort of split the bounty, work together, and just get off the ship collectively.
Hey, you made it out. I knew you would.
I need to shut down the prison's shield to get off this rock. Got any ideas?
Well, let's see. You're gonna need to somehow overheat or T-store the cooling coils on the Tower's 3 relay arms. That'll cause a core meltdown, and that'll shut it down, I think.
What about you?
Oh, don't worry about me, stranger. This is the best day I've had in decades. I owe it all to you. Be a fine day to cash it all in. See you on the other side.
During this final section, we then have to disable 3 shield reactors. Well, that's what the game calls them anyway. It's introduced into yet another platforming section, which, yes, I died many times to, which actually resulted in me restarting the game. Because like previously stated, the platform sections in the game, if you fail, you fall to your death. I didn't really have an issue with this. It was nice. It just felt quite repetitive, but again, I enjoyed it for the majority of it, really. In terms of disabling the reactors, we just go around disabling the reactors. Yeah. After we sort of conclude this section, we get to the final boss of the mission, and yep, you guessed it, it's another fighter ship. And that's it. So once we fight our way through the last bit of the generators, we come outside, we fight off some more enemies, and then we get to our ship, well, our new ship anyway. We then are rewarded with a cutscene, which is Montross, the bounty hunter from earlier, who found out that Higgs, the gentleman that he captured earlier, gave him false information regarding a hit. So he hears about the riots and figures out who else is it going to be. Of course, it's Django, and then he decides to follow us to our next location.
Be careful. The guards patrol the jungle, and there's also some nasty creatures prowling around there.
I imagine some of his guards have prices on their own heads.
A few. I'll send you their mugs so you can scan for them.
So because now we have to hand our bounty in, the bounty location is the planet Malasta, but because of where it is, we have to go through this absolute incredible jungle level called Dagobah. So new level, new enemies. This level is cool, even to this day. I think it really holds up quite nicely. You've got flying bugs, but the star of the show is the Nexus beast, the spider tiger looking monster. It is also another creature from the movies. Just pointed out that not once does this game give you information regarding the name of the races of these monsters. This is all being added from external sources and from memory from watching the movies and games as a kid, and then obviously fact checking them before making the video. I think would have been a great opportunity. Like I said, I'm not using the scanner as much throughout the later part of the game. I think an excellent use of it, for example, would be if you could scan the creatures and it would provide you with details of their origin, information, a little bit about them. And I don't feel that would have been a much strain on the PlayStation 2 hardware at the time. I just want to point out what you're seeing now is just some sort of glitch. This is the first glitch that I've actually ran into. I've had actually no issues at all, but it gave us a perfect opportunity to have a look at this beautiful creature up close. When you first see this beast of a creature, it's actually attacking other enemies, what I thought was cool, and there's a couple of instances throughout the game where this actually happens, where you see enemies fight other enemies. If you watch from a distance, you can sometimes catch it. Another enemy type, or an enemy type more so of a reskin, is the classic machine gun class in the Dugs. This is a species of the bad guy in the pod racer scene from Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It was at this point I felt the game got a little bit more difficult, with harder enemies, more enemies and tighter spaces. I'll be honest, I died a few times here, but what they actually started to make me do is not just stick to the blaster pistols. As you can see from the gameplay, I was not say restricted, but I found myself using the pistols more than anything. But this is when the game started throwing more enemies at you, so then you had to adapt what you already actually had to tackle the threat ahead. So the game becomes no longer this rolling around Dark Souls PvP, and actually you're looking at cover, you're taking note of how much ammo you've got for your rocket launcher, and it's just become a much more streamlined and actual tactical based game. Still, obviously, you're flying around, but there's more structure to it. We make our way through the jungle once more, but this time we find another flat section in this beautiful area with these stone buildings. Well, you first attempt, you jump from platform to platform, and you guessed it, if you fall off, you die, again, in quick succession. I quickly realised the run and gun style of play was no longer working. It then clicked, and the mission to follow up would put this in perspective a little bit more, is it puts you in a position where you have to now use all the guns. Now, I know I briefly spoke about this, but like I said, to this point, you have all this arsenal, but you sort of stick with the guns you already know. So now I'm using the sniper from Zam. Now I'm sort of trying to control the rockets around and just generally having me think a little bit more. We then help Zam through each of the following sections, dropping down ladders, lifts and bridges, as she does not have a jetpack, as she likes to remind you, very often in fact. After these sections, again flying around a bit longer, shoot some more baddies, and then at the end of the sequence, Zam then asks for her sniper back, which we oblige. I failed to mention up to this point that there is fall damage, but it's not necessarily damage that kills you. It's the stagger that applies to you when you hit the floor, which allows enemies to kill you faster. After a small amount of time, Zam gives our sniper back and goes and waits next to the ship because Jengo said so. Interesting, Jengo told Zam to wait at the ship and she just totally agreed. With no sort of hesitation, which is important because I'll come back to it later. When we get to Sepulto, we ask him for information, and he attempts to flee as he does not want to give this information up for whatever reason. We follow him down some pipes, slides and avoids obstacles, but Sepulto misses one of the pipes, hits the side and falls to his death. Yeah, it's quite amusing and kind of just came out of nowhere, but yeah, he just died. Now we go down some sliding pipes and try and do a better job than Sepulto did. The game is very good at switching things up when it starts to get a little bit stale. When as soon as I'm feeling a bit meh about Bounty Hunter, it turns around and slaps you with something cool, a new mechanic, a new weapon, whatever it may be. It breaks up the structure of the game very nicely for the short experience of what it is. I really enjoyed sliding down these pipes, as again it broke the structure up quite nicely. It wasn't until I realised that you still take fall damage even when you're going down these pipes, and you don't regenerate health, as obviously I've said before, so it actually becomes quite tedious and difficult. So you have to then use your jetpack in a way that you use it just before you hit the ground, so you avoid damage, right? On top of this, you then have to manage your fuel. So this is when I started to realise that your fuel regenerates when you're not using it. So again, I started getting frustrated quite early on, and then it was actually, okay, no, this is how they want me to do it. So again, you're adapting your limited arsenal to the task at hand. I know I sound like a scratch record, but I can see the downfalls with this game, and I can see where it leaves a sour taste in some people's mouths and how they can't bounce from it. For example, for me, okay, this bit was difficult, but okay, I'm going to bounce back. I'm going to try it again, and actually I can see the good in that. But honestly, I know it's not that easy, because having a sliding section like this and then just losing damage all the time, that's not part of that enjoyable experience. Right, I'm just going to go a bit off script here because I just can't believe there is yet another platforming section. After the flying trains of doom, the pillars of chaos, everything in between, we're now moving to the platform of sin. And boys, have I become the one thing I hated, the platformer god. I actually enjoyed this section, going through it with the green colour liquid and the pipes running over the platforms to avoid the gaps, adding something new in. And I would like to point out the difficulty in chapter 3, I think it was exactly that. It was a massive difficulty spike. After that, the game gets very easy again, apart from the last chapter. The pipes come out to the Death Stick Factory, our final location for Chapter 4. Making our way through the Death Stick Factory, or I call it the underground layer, we meet a new enemy, which I would best describe as Bigfoot with a hockey mask on. They're melee based enemies that have massive amount of health and massive amount of damage. Nice addition now, we're coming towards the end of the game. Again, throwing that new objective, that new thing at you. They have one of the coolest running animations though, and they behave very much like zombies. I like this. It was very difficult for what it was, and you've come to expect that now, which is nice. We now explore these underground ruins with these zombie-like creatures. That's amazing. These creatures are called Bandogora members. They have no other name other than that, and we are told that Vosa is the highest priestess of this area and is the leader of the Bandogora. Jengo enters the factory to find some Bandogora members guarding a ship with hut marks all over it, suggesting that the Hutts have something involved in the Bandogora. The Hutts referring to Jabba the Hutt family, so it's not just Jabba the Hutt, there's quite a lot of them. While we're searching for clues for our next lead, we are ambushed by Montrose once more. This is the final boss for this chapter, and I don't need to say anything more really. You can guess what the final boss is.
You always did catch on quick, but you still haven't learned. Only one of us will claim the prize. Vosa's bounty will be mine.
Over my dead
Just a
body.
little quick recap as we approach chapter 5. What it is we found a group called the Bandogora, which we've been following for a while now, and we're aware that Vosa is the leader of this. So we go off to find the Hutts in search to find what information they have on the Bandogora, with the hope that then we can find Vosa within that.
Probably to hide the trail.
If the Hutts deal directly with Vosa, then they know where she is.
Right. Set course for Tatooine.
So after we've completed this mission, we are picked up by Zam and we head to Tatooine to speak to Gardala. She's one of the Hutts to get information about Vosa. But when we get there, we find out it's only Jabba the Hutt that knows where she is. So to help Jabba the Hutt to tell us where Ghidorah, we take down a bounty called Two Guns, who is another gang leader. As Jabba the Hutt has a bounty on him. So it's an exchange of information again repeated. Take down this bounty, we'll then give you information of where she is, and then we'll go find her. Right boys, we did it. Chapter 5. So we saw this chapter in Tatooine with no jetpack. It took me a while to get used to this. It was quite a nice refresher to be stripped back to the bare minimum, especially when you've been so accustomed to using the jetpack for so long. This means no rockets or flamethrower, and in turn made the section more difficult. I like this level as it has little creatures running around the floor and bigger friendly creatures spotted in and around the map, as well as sand crawlers. One of the things that they've done very well is keeping the map and the level alive despite the console's limitations. Each map feels like there is life in its own way. We said previously that like there's starships and sort of vehicles in and around some of the areas in the hotel, and this one there is sort of animals in and around the area as well. Those nice little things as well. This map adds the addition of the grenade throwing enemies, and yep, they throw grenades. These guys are difficult for all the wrong reasons. They are difficult as they can hardly see the tiny pixel of grenades behind the backdrop, which is the PlayStation 2 graphics. And because of that, I died a lot just not being able to see it. And we have to remember this is a HD upscaling, so again, this is more clearer than it would be when it was in the initial release, and I just found it very difficult. I was just looking through the replays and just getting blown up, and I had no idea why. When we do get to the gang lead and his henchmen, we come to yet another difficulty spike, and I'll be honest, I died here an awful lot. Because it was the end of the mission, I had to do the entire mission again. After trying and error, I did kill him. All he is a bullet sponge. When we do get to the gang leader and his henchmen, we come to yet another very difficult spike. Here I died an awful lot, and because it's the very end of the mission, I had to do the entire section again. And after try and error, I did kill him. He is a bullet sponge. Two Guns is the name of the target, and he's located in a hangar area with loads of enemies, which made it difficult due to the number of enemies on the screen and having no cover. Two Gun behaves as a standard enemy, just with like 1000% more HP. I did not realise though, if you kill him first, it then triggers a cutscene and the mission ends. So I spent a lot of time killing all the enemies around him to make the game easier, and it just sort of threw back in my face really. This felt great actually when I killed him. The only thing is I don't see how you can kill him with one life. There's just too many enemies. And after trial and error, I did beat him with a minimum 2, but I went over it again to see if I could do it with any less, and I just couldn't. I'm by far no means bad at the game, but yeah, I just wanted to sort of highlight that really, because I thought it was a strange mix. There's no other sort of area in the game that sort of works the same as this one. After this, we have a cutscene with the Slug himself, Jabba the Hutt. And we've got subtitles here because he doesn't speak English, but why is it possible to add subtitles here but not for everyone else? But I digress. Jabba is impressed with our abilities to take down Two Guns, and he tells us Gardaleia's location and that she is in fact working with the Bando Gora, and she does know the location of Vosa. I promise you this is the last one when it comes on this wild goose chase on get this person, take this information, kill this person, and then this is it now. So it confirms our suspicions, and we've got a strong lead. Chapter 5 introduces yet more enemy types. The game does not give up. Familiar faces for Star Wars fans, the Massifs, who make an appearance in the series The Mandalorian and are actually domesticated by the Tuskens, what we saw earlier. The new enemy type, these guys are not just a reskin. The Mastiffs jump at you with like a punch, while the Tuskens behave in similar to standard enemies, but with a slower rate of fire. But they have additional damage. So again, similar enemies, just behaving a little bit different. They're often located above you as well, while having the high ground. So that, again, adds a little bit more challenge to this enemy. The fire pits are located around the map do hurt Jengo. I tried. I think it would be a sin not to see if fire hurts you with any game I play. We require the sniper rifle once more and we put it to good use. What I did find useful in this section throughout the sand domes is using the free aim with the rocket launcher, just because the enemies are too far away for you to lock on. Because of this, I found actually that you have control over your rockets once you've sort of fired them. It follows the direction of where you're aiming. I never really utilised this during my playthrough, and I can't think how it would actually come in useful, as the enemies don't run around, they just stay in the same spot. And also the AoE on this rocket is massive anyway. Killing the enemy and getting into the sort of end area of this mission now, we are welcome to yet another cutscene where we approach a castle base or type of thing, but we notice Zam is imprisoned, to which we attempt to leave her there as we don't want to draw suspicion. Despite Zam being ordered to wait at the ship early with no resistance in the last chapter, she now for some reason doesn't trust Jango, so she shouts for the guards. The guards are then called and they knock me out. We wake up stripped of our gear and we are facing the beast called the Karaita Dragon, who this is, Gardelas refers to her as a monster, as her pet, so this is just her beast really. We run away, well that's what we're meant to do. I attempted numerous times to escape by beating everyone with my fists until I realised that's not what the game actually wanted you to do. So what you need to do is just run past all the enemies until you get your stuff back. It's until then you can fight your way back to the new area, which means new skins for enemies like the burly, the pig-like brutes, again a bit more health but just another reskin. You make your way through the tight corridors around the market full of people getting caught in the gunfire due to the new burly enemies just coming in and just blowing everything up. Right, so as we make our way back to the big slug, we feed her to her dragon before she gives us the location of Vosa. After this, we put down the dragon, who has this slam ability, that if you're near it, it will knock you down. Up to this point, no enemies have ever respawned, so once they're dead, they're dead. But in this location, they kept respawning. I didn't understand this, as they not necessarily dropped ammo. It's heavily hinted that you kill these enemies to get their ammo though, so I'm not too sure what happened here. But anyway, the best idea is just to say right at the back of the cage, pull your pistols out and just fire away until it's dead, because it can't hit you. Pretty poor level design for this one, is my only complaint. Once the beast is dead, we are given our final cutscene of cutscene 5. We leave Zam on the planet as we are leaving the planet to go see Vosa. We get given a call from Roz, who is under attack, so we decide to go pay her a visit to see if she's okay. We arrive at Roz station to her seconds away from death. She had been attacked by Montross. She gave us a device that will aid us in finding Vosa, and with her dying wish that Jengo would find something to live for worth more than just money. This is super sad, and I haven't covered much about Roz because it's something that's in your ear from the start and the end of the game, and she's been your only friend really from start to finish. So when she died, you really feel for these pixelated characters. We did it now. We got to the last chapter, chapter 6. Chapter 6 is a little bit shorter than the other chapters, with a lot of running around, but we'll get onto that shortly. It's the last act of them all, and we started given a cutscene of our rival Montross. Obviously, he's killed our friend Roz. This has no longer become about credits anymore, but revenge. This is only 3 missions long, whereas the other chapters are always 5. Now this section starts off a little bit rough. These zombie type creatures we met in chapter 4 make a return here, and it's a matter of running around. It's like a round of COD zombies and clicking the buttons to open to the next section. Unfortunately, this is not COD zombies, and it works absolutely awfully. The zombies respawn, which doesn't give you enough time to click the buttons without getting hit, and it's made this section very frustrating. It's down to poor game design really than anything else. Once we've completed the Temple Run area, we get to yet another platforming section where we move around on the inside of this temple area. This is the only platform section where if you fall, you don't actually die, you just move back to where you started from the start. What is nice is Roz pre-recorded some voice memos directed to Jengo before she died. So I mentioned prior to this is she's constantly in your ear, despite after death that she still continues to do that, and knowing that she's not with us anymore is really sad. We then come to this swamp-like area that you can't touch the floor or you'll get tick damage similar to the green stuff in the previous mission, so you have to fly your way around it until you get to the end. This last mission is very dark and has a darker atmosphere and tone, and obviously you're filled with rage with the loss of your friends, so it really sort of amps up the fact that you're coming towards the end of the game now. We meet Montross for the 3rd and final time. This is Bounty Hunter, no ships, thank God for that. So it's just one-on-one. After we fight to the death, Montross fails, and we refuse to give him a Mandalorian death, and we leave him to get eaten alive by the Bandogora. This felt great, despite Vosa being the main bad guy of the game. It was Montross who killed our friend, and it was him who has been antagonising us and disrespecting our culture from the start and bringing shame to something that we hold so dearly. So for me, this was a much more rewarding end to the game than actually Vosa.
Jengo! Come back!
time to finish what we started. We head to the underground temple, which is an absolute beautiful area, and putting Montrose down is nothing can stop us now. We then get to the temple and die, but rather than have like a restart screen, we get a cutscene. So whoop, this time we were actually meant to die. The woman that we have been seeing in the shadows during the cutscene appears to be Vosa. This is not much more of a surprise. She is a dual-wielding dark Jedi. She tortures us and demands we put the bounty on her head, but luckily Zam comes in from behind her and takes a shot and shoots us free. Zam gets injured in the process as she attempts to attack Vosa, and Vosa makes a run for it.
Bounty hunter, you found me. Now tell me, who hired you?
We then chase Vosa into another temple run section, but I don't care too much of the repeated environment just because I'm quite excited to sort of take her out, really. We then get to the main temple run where we have a one-on-one encounter with Vosa where we have to just keep on taking her health down. Not to keep saying I died a lot here, but when you do die against her, you do get a unique death animation similar to like the Arkham series, and it's also a little nod to the movie because she ends up cutting your head off and like the camera rolls into your head being left on the side, very obviously reminiscent of the films. The way we kill her is just by shooting her and then stop shooting her when she starts reflecting the bullets, as that does back damage to yourself. Unfortunately, this is about it to the technique. You can just use the zip wire to disable her for a short piece of time, but that's all it is. It's just for a short piece of time. You're just best off firing away, really. And she's down, and that's it. The cutscene plays. So the cutscene plays with Count Dooku appearing from absolutely nowhere to finish off Vosa by force choking her to death. I was stunned as Jango was at this point. Obviously, we meet Count Dooku, who was originally set the bounty on her. It's explained that it was merely just a test to find someone worthy of becoming the genetic template for the clone army. He asked Jango if he would be okay to be cloned, in which he replies yes on one condition, that he would be kept one clone for himself. This is a nod to Roz's last words before she died, asking Jango to do something more than just money. Jango took the 5 million back credit bounty, and the game ends with you carrying an injured Zam out in your arms as she jokes about splitting the bounty in half.
Guess you got her, huh?
You could say that.
So, we're going to split the bounty 50-50, right?
Don't push your luck, Sam.
So, and that concludes it, really. So the game answers many questions for the people that are loving the movie, and perfectly sets up for the second film coming out at the time. But it also serves as a perfect standalone experience for people who just want to play as a bounty hunter. So what this sets up is the fact that Boba Fett that you see in the movie is actually not Jango's son that people perceive it to be. It's actually his clone of a younger self, and Zam requested that he would do something more with his life rather than money, and that was raising his own son, clone, so to speak. And with that comes the end of our journey. As this was more of a breakdown and my thoughts and feelings throughout the video, I shall allow you to come up with your final conclusion. But for some last words, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Star Wars Bounty Hunter despite its flaws. I feel that if you can look past the repetitive narrative and some of the chosen game designs and you just fancy a Star Wars game, I highly recommend it. Unfortunately, I cannot see a reveal anytime soon or any HD remaster that haven't already received something like The Last of Us Part 2. But there is always something nice about playing these old gems. You have a new appreciation for modern media afterwards. One thing I wanted to add that sounds very, very good, not just incredible, is the music. I know that I've banged on about it a lot, but the sound of the blasters to the footsteps to everything in between. The voice acting is spot on, especially when you consider the game came out in 2002. We just have to look at old school Final Fantasy and other games around that era to see how great the voice acting really is in this. So before we sort of conclude and come to, again, sort of final thoughts, I wanted to spend some time going over the bonus items within the menu. The bonus items are in fact under the bonus section, shocker. So you get given the Dark Horse comic book, which is pretty cool. You get that at the start, so you can just have a little nosy around that. You unlock this at the start of the game, and then as you go progress with the trading cards, they're called wizard trading cards. These are acquired by getting the secrets within the mission. I remember the Harry Potter ones. I don't remember they had a Star Wars one. The secrets have no name other than secrets. These look like checkpoints but are golden, and you can find one per level, usually located in hidden areas. There is composite art, and there's a lot of it, which is acquired from in-game bounty hunting. Last but not least, the great addition of any game, the outtakes. This is absolutely ridiculous and an absolute highlight. I've laughed out loud many a times. It's actually incredible, and I love every single one of them, so I'll leave some of these on at the end of the video, just as sort of like a little appreciation for it, really, because you don't sort of see games sort of take the mick out of themselves, especially these days.
The strong silent type. Ooh! Oh, that had to hurt.
Cat, what's the problem?
What's my motivation?
You're a bounty hunter. You hunt bounties. Got it?
Yeah, okay, I'm a bounty hunter. I've got it.
Great, let's try it again. This time, do a little faster, more urgent. Remember, you're a bounty hunter.
Right. Got it. Bounty hunter. But who's the bounty?
Does it matter?
Oh, well, I guess not, but,
Yeah, we'll put them in later. You know, CGI. Use your imagination.
do I have any dialogue?
Nope, you're a bounty hunter. You don't need dialogue. Ready?
Yep, okay, right, ready, yeah, I'm ready.
Action.
Thank you if you've got this far. This was just a project for me on a personal level. I wanted to see if I could do it, because I spend a lot of time watching these types of YouTubers that have these retrospectives. It goes on for hours long, and I love it. So I just wanted to sort of give back to the community that I love so much. Unfortunately, I don't have the funds to sort of be working with using upscalers or good ones anyway. So for the benefit of the video, it was used as a HD upscaling through PlayStation. But again, if you've got this far, thank you so much. Any feedback would be muchly appreciated, or any sort of recommendations for games. But yeah, thank you.